Okay, so we are going to discuss about sarcoidosis in this particular video. So let's discuss sarcoidosis. Okay, now sarcoidosis is a multi-system disorder. Okay, it's a multi-system disorder, and characteristically it involves many systems as by its description. But our discussion particularly would be only about the pulmonary sarcoidosis since we are in a chest radiology series. So first of all, a brief discussion about the sarcoidosis, the epidemiology of sarcoidosis. Okay, first we'll discuss about the epidemiology of sarcoidosis. Then what are the clinical manifestations? How does it particularly presents? And a brief introduction about the histopathological findings, that what exactly it causes, what type of granuloma it causes. Okay, and then pathological basis of its genesis, or simply I say pathogenesis. Okay, its findings, how they are pathologically related, and this will help in us in understanding the radiology findings of sarcoidosis. Okay, so first, what is the age group that pulmonary sarcoidosis or sarcoidosis commonly involve? So typical age group, if we talk about, its patient has an age of less than 40 years, so it's a young patient. Okay, patient is young, and predominantly if you talk about, it's primarily third decade, that is the most important time when patient presents with sarcoidosis. Okay, in India, if we talk about this incidence of sarcoidosis in India, okay, it's quite less. The reason being very clear, because of its resemblance with other granulomatous diseases like tuberculosis, which is quite prevalent in Asian countries. But in Western countries, since infectious diseases are less common, okay, so sarcoidosis is reported quite common there, and that's why the incidence is also high. So in our country, basically, due to less reporting, because we always keep first priority as tuberculosis, since talking about its prevalence in country like India, sarcoidosis is less reported. That is the reason behind its low incidence. Anyway, now how does sarcoidosis present? Okay, so if we talk about the clinical presentation of sarcoidosis, typically sarcoidosis, 50% of the cases of sarcoidosis are gonna be incidental diagnosis. Patients are not gonna come with the symptoms. Okay, and other symptoms that the patient which are gonna come, they can have typical non-specific pulmonary symptoms. Since we are discussing only about the pulmonary sarcoidosis, so pulmonary symptoms that will be like dyspnea, cough, and patient might have respiratory failure if it is in the severe stage. Typically in higher stages of sarcoidosis, patient might have on, like for example, uh, all those features that may come up, like patient might having a low SpO2, so patient might be, obviously that is why patient is having dyspnea. Okay, because typically sarcoidosis has ILD, or you can say basically interstitial involvement is associated with sarcoidosis. That is why. Other than clinical features, if you talk about the findings, the PFT findings, okay, so patient, since sarcoidosis characteristically involve lung with interstitial involvement, so patient can have a decreased DLCO. Okay, patient can have a restrictive pattern. Okay, so these are the brief, okay, expected pulmonary function thoracic PFT findings, expected clinical features that we may encounter. But how does, nothing is radiology in this particular part till now. So what is its pathogenesis? Okay, how does it happen? For that particular thing, it's important to understand that Sarcoidosis, characteristically, how does it progress? Okay, so we're gonna discuss about radiology. Okay, now radiology of sarcoidosis, specifically pulmonary sarcoidosis. So, and we are gonna see radiology in two dimensions, definitely the chest X-ray and HRCT. Chest X-ray and HRCT. So, and the findings, we'll see findings together. Okay, how a particular thing is gonna look on chest X-ray, how a particular thing is gonna look on HRCT. Okay, another thing that is important to understand here is that what is the incidence, or what is the how many patients, let's say if there are 100 patients, how many patients come up with pulmonary sarcoidosis. So the lung is the most common organ that is involved, and 90 patients, this means 90% involvement of lung is seen. Okay, and as I've told that 50% patients are asymptomatic. Okay, 50% patients are asymptomatic. Okay, and few patients develop symptoms later. At the diagnosis, 50% are asymptomatic. Few patients are gonna, they will be having sarcoidosis, but they will remain asymptomatic. Few patients are gonna be diagnosed with an asymptomatic stage, but they later progress to the symptoms, and some patients are symptomatic at the diagnosis. They are around 25%. So okay, all this is okay. And another thing that is important that I have missed before I straight away go ahead into radiology, that I'm writing here only, is that what about the prognosis, or what about the progression of the disease? It's also important to know. So you should remember that two-third cases, if you talk about two-third cases of sarcoidosis, they go into remission. Okay, they go into remission, and there are few cases which progress. Okay, and they progress to fibrosis, and these patient can few of these patients death can succumb to sarcoidosis as well, which is the most common cause of death is respiratory only. Okay, so this is the progression. Okay, there are few cases only which progress to death, although it's not a major cause of death. Okay, the disease is not deadly. Okay, the prognosis is better. Okay, then another important point, only less than 5% of the patients they die of sarcoidosis, and death is importantly due to fibrosis. So fibrosis causing to respiratory failure. Okay, anyway, so we were discussing pulmonary sarcoidosis, the radiology part, and in radiology we are going to discuss about the two dimensions, chest X-ray and uh, uh, this HRCT. So how are we going to head about it? Okay, how are we going to go about it? So if we talk about the radiology findings of sarcoidosis, okay, we can distinguish, or we can differentiate into three categories primarily. The disease characteristically involve lymph nodes. The disease also involve lung parenchyma, and disease has a characteristic involvement of pleura, although it is not that characteristic. It comes in the atypical findings. Another important point that is left is patient can also get involved heart. Okay, cardiac involvement can also be seen. Okay, but these two, this can be there definitely. This comes typically in atypical sarcoidosis. Okay, if you talk about pleural effusion, pleural thickenings, they come in atypical and rare findings. But the two most important things that somebody should know, that is your lymph node and lung parenchyma. Okay, so let's discuss about them. So in sarcoidosis, when we talk about the lymph node abnormalities, okay, so first of all we're going to talk about the lymph node abnormalities. What all lymph node abnormalities what we see. Okay, so regarding lymph node abnormalities, what exactly it causes? It causes lymphadenopathy. Okay, it causes lymphadenopathy. And okay, lymphadenopathy. So I'm writing lymphadenopathy like this. And the how what we need to understand is what are the features of typical sarcoid lymphadenopathy. Okay, what are the features of typical sarcoid lymphadenopathy, and what all lymph nodes it does it involve. Okay, so lymphadenopathy, the typical lymph nodes that are involved. Okay, there are two important words that we remember. That is, one is your hilar lymphadenopathy, other is your mediastinal lymphadenopathy. Okay, hilar and mediastinal. So hilar nodes, if you need to know about what are the type of nodes that are involved in thorax and what are all their stations, just go ahead with the video, YouTube video in the same channel of RedClean, and I'm just posting going to post it into the description of this particular video of sarcoidosis. Okay, so anyway, hilar and mediastinal. Okay, now important point is that in mediastinal lymph nodes there are a lot of lymph nodes that might come up. Okay, but importantly, a characteristic lymph node that are going to be involved in mediastinal, they are your right paratracheal. They are your right paratracheal nodes. Paratracheal nodes, obviously they come in station 2 and station 4. Okay, but since we have discussed about station right paratracheal, there are 2R and 4R. Okay, and hilar nodes, they are typically, if I am talking about typical sarcoidosis, they are typically bilateral and symmetric. Okay, now there are other mediastinal nodes also which can be involved, but if you talk about the most commonly involved nodes, okay, the three important nodes are right, since I have listed bilateral, so it's right and left hilar lymph nodes and right paratracheal lymph node, and that is why what we see on this typical X-ray, okay, that comes up with sarcoidosis is a bilar hilar lymphadenopathy. You can see this typical X-ray. We can see this, okay, and here that this is your bilar. You know, these are your left. This is your right hilar. This is your left hilar, and there is some lymph node here also. So this typical, you know, this is your 1, 2, 3 sign that is typically seen on a chest X-ray. Okay, this is your 1, this is your 2, this is your 3. Typical 1, 2, 3 sign that is seen in sarcoidosis. And whenever we encounter such X-ray of bilateral hilar lymphadenopathy, okay, the sarcoidosis becomes the first differential in this. Obviously, there are other differentials as well because it's not specific for sarcoidosis, but definitely if it is bilaterally symmetric, it becomes specific. Why? Because in other differentials, characteristically they involve lymphadenopathy is either unilateral, but it could be bilateral. Okay. Anyway, another important point would be if other mediastinal lymph nodes, okay, other mediastinal lymph node that can come up here, if lymph nodes are also here, let's say in this particular part, okay, and these lymph nodes are basically station 5 and station 6 lymph nodes, or you can call them aortopulmonary lymph node. Aortopulmonary lymph node. These lymph nodes, if you find them in addition to this, okay, this 3 was for here only, okay, this 3 was for here only, okay, left hilar. This, if these lymph nodes are also there, then the sign becomes 1 2 3 4. Okay, then so whether it is 1 2 3 sign or whether it is 1 2 3 4 sign, both of these are seen in sarcoidosis. Okay, both of them are seen in sarcoidosis. 1 2 3 sign is also known as Garland sign. Other name is Garland sign. Another name is lambda sign. Okay, so these are the features. Now another important point is, we are talking about the lymphadenopathy only on X-ray. If I talk about that on chest X-ray, what are the most common lymph nodes that are involved? The answer would be hilar lymph node. Okay, but on the CT the answer would be different. On CT the answer would be right paratracheal lymph node. Okay, the order changes of the most common node. Why? Because on chest X-ray you are very likely to see hilar lymph node. Okay, symmetric hilar lymph nodes. Okay, now another important point is that we need to know is, let's say, what is important of hilar lymph node. Okay, that if hilar lymph nodes are not there, let's say you may be having lymphadenopathy, okay, mediastinal lymphadenopathy, but you are not having hilar lymphadenopathy. So if you are not having hilar lymphadenopathy, okay, you should question the diagnosis, because these are the most important lymph nodes to be there. Okay, these are the most important lymph nodes to be there. Okay, now there is a characteristic which is around 40 years old staging, that is on the basis of chest X-ray. Okay, staging is based on the chest X-ray. That staging was given before CT was there. So the use of that staging right now is quite limited, and that staging is known by name of Silsbach. Silsbach is the person who gave this staging. Okay, I am just, for the sake of completion, the topic I'm writing, although it has no use or limited use in current times. Silsbach. So we divided the stage, and the staging is only on the basis of chest X-ray findings. Chest X-ray only. Okay, so stage 0 1 2 3 4. Okay, stage 0 is definitely no findings, patient is on no findings, no rad findings. Stage 1 is simply bilateral hilar lymphadenopathy. Stage 2 is bilateral hilar lymphadenopathy plus lung disease or lung involvement. Stage 3 is lung involvement only. Okay, and stage 4 is extensive end stage fibrosis. Okay, so another important point is that if you see what are the incidence of the findings that the patient come up with, so you'll see that majority of the patients, they are your stage 2, most common. If you talk about most common, they are in the stage 2. Okay, 50% of the patients are there in stage 2. Okay, another important point would also be about the prognosis. So obviously the prognosis, as you move from stage 0 to stage 4, the prognosis is poor. Okay, and since this staging is on the chest X-ray, on the basis of chest X-ray only, so it has a limited use, and right now we have CT scan. So the findings that you might be having stage 1 on chest X-ray, but when you do CT scan you find lung involvement. So the staging has basically lost its importance. Anyway, so let's move forward. As we move forward, okay, so now we have to discuss about we discuss about a typical involvement of lymph nodes or mediastinal lymph nodes or hilar lymph nodes. Now what is important is that regarding lymph node is, can we have a unilateral hilar lymphadenopathy? Now this is rare. Okay, it can be, definitely it can be. Okay, unilateral can be. It's around 5% cases only. So whenever you have a unilateral hilar lymphadenopathy, suspect other diagnosis. Example, tuberculosis. Example, lymphoma. Okay, this goes against sarcoidosis. Another important point would be, can you have necrotic lymph node in sarcoidosis? Definitely, definitely we can have, but again, it's rare. Okay, it's rare. Enhancement or peripheral enhancement that is characteristically seen in necrotic lymph nodes of sarcoidosis, it's not there. Okay, so these are the typical findings that we need to just see, and regarding lymph nodes. And whenever we encounter atypical lymph node, another thing that we can see in a particular lymph node is a calcification. Okay, so if you can you see calcification in the lymph nodes? So definitely yes, definitely calcification can be seen in sarcoid nodules as well as sarcoid lymph nodes. Okay, calcification can be seen, but the pattern of the calcification, say for example, what are the patterns of calcification that can be seen? So punctate calcification. Okay, then you have axial calcification. Now when you have axial calcification, you should suspect, the first diagnosis you should suspect is silicosis. It goes in the favor of silicosis. Similarly, punctate calcifications, or the calcification can also be popcorn calcification. Okay, these are the typical calcifications that may be seen, or amorphous calcification. Okay, so whenever we see these type of calcification, we need to suspect other diagnosis. Okay, like for example, if you see punctate calcification, it is seen in chronic granulomatous diseases. Okay, example tuberculosis, you can see tuberculosis. Okay, you can see this in TB as well. So these are the, so calcification can be seen in sarcoidosis as well. Okay, all these patterns can be seen, but you should suspect silicosis to take a history of silica exposure. So these are the typical patterns or an atypical patterns. Okay, so if you talk about calcified node, okay, then I would say what calcified node suggests in sarcoidosis is that disease is chronic. Disease has been, there has been some time. Okay, if calcification is there. Okay, so other type of lymphadenopathy, if you see anterior mediastinal lymphadenopathy or posterior mediastinal lymphadenopathy, they go against it. Okay, so that was all about the lymph nodes. Okay, and you can clearly see lymph nodes there on CT as well. You can see it on the CT as well. We can have it here. See, if we leave see this image, in this image we can see it. So in this image you can see these are the lymph nodes. Okay, and the arrows are showing the bilateral hilar lymphadenopathy again. Okay, so this lymph node, so it most likely is in subcarinal location. Okay, because it is under the carina. Okay, then you have this node, this is your, this appears to be a right paratracheal node. Okay, and we have left hilar nodes is there. Obviously there would have been a right hilar node as well. Okay, so these are, now these, if you see the lower two images like this image and this image, you can see that there is a calcification. Okay, there's calcification there, and this is a characteristic punctate type of calcification. This is a characteristic egg shell calcification. Okay, egg shell calcification, and in egg shell calcification you should suspect first of all silicosis become first DD. Okay, so this is all about regarding the CT findings. Okay, about lymphadenopathy. Now let's discuss about next important thing, that is your lung involvement. Okay, lung involvement. Now in lung, okay, when we are going to discuss about lung, what we're gonna see. Okay, in lung involvement, what you need to understand first of all, what is the part of the lung that is involved. Okay, what is the part of the lung that is involved and what does it causes. So first we will discuss about the pathogenesis. Okay, now sarcoidosis has a characteristic importance of that it causes non-caseating granulomas. Okay, it causes non-caseating granulomas. Okay, now in lung these granulomas are gonna present like what? Nodules. These are gonna present like nodules, and these nodules, okay, so we have small nodules that are gonna be present. They are obviously ranging from millimetric size to 1 centimeter up till 1 centimeter. So we're gonna have nodules, small nodules. Okay, okay, now these nodules, okay, and what is the pattern? Okay, what pattern nodule is gonna be? The pattern of the nodule, where the nodule is gonna be, the nodules are gonna be interstitial. Okay, they have an interstitial pattern of nodule. So nodule are gonna be interstitial. Okay, and when we talk about the interstitial nodule, okay, they are found in the interstitium, but what will be the pattern? What will be the pattern? Now another important word that I'm gonna just write it here. The pattern of the nodule is characteristically perilymphatic. Perilymphatic. Perilymphatic pattern of distribution of nodule. And this particular distribution, whenever we describe a nodule, we describe it into two patterns. Okay, patterns of distribution. One pattern of distribution is pertaining to secondary pulmonary nodule. Okay, and another distribution is pertaining to the whole lung. Okay, that whether it is a lobar, which lobe involvement is there, if it is diffuse involvement is there. Okay, or if it is patchy, so, or random distribution, whatever it is. But this perilymphatic distribution is pertaining to secondary pulmonary nodule, which will be discussed later in some video. Okay, that when we will discuss about the typical patterns like centrilobular pattern or perilymphatic pattern of distribution. Anyway, what is a perilymphatic pattern? So perilymphatic pattern, I'll show it in an image, CT scan image, but there are four characteristic areas that we see of involvement, whenever we call it perilymphatic. What are those? First important point, although I'm writing it on the first, why? Because it is the most important site of perilymphatic area that is characteristically involved in sarcoidosis, and that is your peribronchovascular interstitium. Another important point, another important location, that is your subpleural location. Subpleural location, because we have lymphatics there. Okay, another important location is your interlobular septal location. Interlobular septa, because we have lymphatics there. Fourth important location, you can also have centrilobular peribronchovascular interstitium. Okay, and yeah, definitely there's a fifth location also that is also a part of lung parenchyma only. Okay, and interstitium, that would be your intralobular location. Okay, intralobular location. In intralobular interstitium also, because this also can give rise to a reticular opacity. Okay, when we talk about reticular opacity, it could be interlobular, it can be intralobular. Okay, inside the secondary pulmonary nodule, let's say this is your secondary pulmonary nodule. Okay, so if you are having this septal thickening, it can also give rise to, which is your interlobular septal thickening. This is interlobular septa. This is interlobular septa, or you may have a thickening inside the lobule also, which is your intralobular thickening. Both of them can give rise to reticular pattern, which will be seen in sarcoidosis. Then we have this okay, so let's discuss about them. Okay, see, so we discuss about the pattern. Okay, now if you see pattern, nodules. Okay, so we have nodules. Okay, right now we discuss that we have nodules. These nodules are characteristically involved in perilymphatic location. And what are the locations that we saw? Okay, I'm first gonna see them on how do they look. Okay, so if you take this particular CT scan, okay, we are gonna look at here. Okay, because if you see, this is the peribronchovascular location. Okay, this is your bronchovascular structures which are there, and they are characteristically where so it typically is, you know, the peribronchovascular interstitium that I told in the first point is typically in the parahilar location. Parahilar, so it is near the hila, around the hila, and you can see this is the bronchovascular structure. And this typical, you know, if you see closely, these are multiple small nodules. Okay, multiple small nodules. Multiple small nodules, you know, in parahilar peribronchovascular interstitium, which characteristically is a location of sarcoidosis in this particular area. Okay, other location that we discussed is subpleural location. The nodules are like here, this is subpleural location. Okay, then another thing is, if you see interlobular septal thickening, you see septal thickenings like this. Okay, this is also a location, you can see it here, subpleural location, or somewhere here you see thickenings like this, although it's not in here. So here it is parahilar peribronchovascular interstitium, which is most common perilymphatic pattern that is clearly seen in sarcoidosis. Okay, parahilar location is very important. Okay, and what does it cause is basically this parahilar location. Let's say this is your bronchus. Okay, this is the wall of your bronchus. So the nodule, we have interstitium here. Okay, if you talk about interstitium, we have interstitium here. This is, suppose I have discussed, this is your interstitium, this is your interstitium. So we have interstitium here, and this interstitium, in this interstitium we develop what? We develop nodule. So nodule will develop like this. Okay, the small nodules that are going to develop like this, and these nodules are basically, you know, project into this. So if you may see the bronchus wall to be what? Nodular in sarcoidosis, like this, like this. Okay, so this is perilymphatic pattern, characteristic involvement seen in sarcoidosis. Okay, then these nodules are also, remember, these nodules are also symmetrical. These nodules are also, you know, these nodules are also going to be symmetrical, and these nodules are going to be bilateral. So they are also be symmetrical, these are going to be bilateral. Okay, so I have shown this on CT scan. Okay, similarly, if we take chest x-ray, then what pattern we'll find? We'll find a nodular pattern, and these nodules, they are interstitial, so they can be well defined. But remember there that they can also be ill defined here. Okay, haziness can also be there. And do you think that only nodular pattern is there? So I have told that there can be interstitial fibrosis as well. But remember, among all the four, okay, among all the 4 points of perilymphatic pattern, like subpleural, peribronchovascular interstitium, okay, and what is one thing that is remaining, the last point, that is, let's say this is your central pulmonary okay, pulmonary nodules. Then here is centrilobular location where there is your pulmonary artery, branch of pulmonary artery. If you know, and bronchus is also there. Okay, so bronchiole is also there. Here is a bronchiole and there is a pulmonary artery. So centrilobular, okay, peribronchovascular location. This is also a centrilobular. This is also a bronchovascular location. This location is also bronchovascular because we have at the center of secondary pulmonary nodule we have a bronchiole and a branch of pulmonary artery. So this location is also peribronchovascular, just like this, but it will be peripheral. It will be peripheral because bronchiole will be peripheral. So here also this is also peribronchovascular, but but it is in the center of the secondary pulmonary nodule. That's why we call it centrilobular peribronchovascular location. This is parahilar peribronchovascular location. Other two are interlobular septal thickening or subpleural location. So there are total 4 locations. Most common being this, which I have already told. And okay, so this can also be there. So if you see this particular thing, okay, so and among these 4, what I was telling you is what is the least common? Least common would be interlobular septal thickening. Interlobular septal thickening, which I just showed. These are least common. These are rare here. Okay, these are gonna be rare here. Okay. Anyway, otherwise, you can have a reticular pattern as well. We can see reticular pattern here also, and reticulonodal pattern on chest X-ray. We can see. Okay, but primarily if you talk about, I would go for a nodular pattern. We would have to talk about it. Okay, and chest X-ray is obviously less sensitive to pick these findings. Okay, we can have CT, HRCT, which characteristically shows this. Okay, so anyway, now see, now when we were discussing about the nodules. Okay, we discussed nodules. Okay, so these are the small nodules. Now what happens to these nodules is, these are small nodules. Okay, now they can coalesce. And if they coalesce, they can become big, or I should rather use a change the thickness would be, I should take these. Okay, so the nodule are big like this. They can become big nodule like this, more than 1 centimeter. They can convert into this particular. So these are your large nodules. Okay, these are your large nodules. Okay, and if they further coalesce, what will happen? If they further coalesce, then definitely what you're going to see is, you're going to see a patch. Okay, you're going to see a patch like this. You're going to see a patch like this, and okay, you're going to see a patch like this. But the characteristic patch that we're going to see, so whatever you're going to see is that these are small interstitial, and nodules were interstitial. Okay, nodules were interstitial. Okay, and these nodules, since were they interstitial, okay, so you will see a patch like this, and this patch is having ill-defined borders at the periphery. Okay, is having ill-defined borders at the periphery, and so it's characteristically fades, and at the periphery you are seeing small nodules which are there. So basically what it is entailing, it's telling us that the coalescing of the nodule starts in the center, and it gradually progresses. So there are small nodules that are left at the periphery which have not coalesced yet. Okay, these nodules obviously they are like, so they are called satellite nodules. Okay, they are like a satellite to this particular central patch, and this appears like a consolidation. Okay, this appears like a consolidation, or it is a consolidation. So it is a consolidation, or it appears like consolidation. So obviously it mimics consolidation. Why? because it's a union of multiple nodules. It's a union of multiple nodules, but these nodules were what? They were interstitial. I have already told the nodules are interstitial, but they coalesce and form a patch. First they form large nodules. Okay, so these are what? These are large nodules. Okay, and later it forms it appears like consolidation, so I call it mimics consolidation. It's actually is not a consolidation. Okay, so it, by consolidation I mean it mimics alveolar opacity or alveolar disease. Okay, since it is also having ill-defined borders, it appears like a fluffy opacity with satellite nodules at its periphery. And again I am telling you that these nodules are characteristically seen at what location? They are characteristically seen at location of their peribronchovascular location. Okay, these nodules are correctly seen at peribronchovascular location. So what do we see here is, we can see that the mimicker sarcoidosis is a mimicker. It's a mimicker, radiological mimicker of multiple diseases, which we'll see later also. But since it is mimicking consolidation, it is mimicking alveolar opacity. Another alveolar opacity which is on the path of consolidation, always on the path of consolidation, is a GGO. It's a GGO. GGO also occurs due to alveolar occupying of alveolar space. So GGO and consolidation. Okay, if we talk about that, can we have GGO or consolidation in your sarcoidosis? Definitely we can have. Okay, you can have a GGO or consolidation, but it's actually not. Why? Because it is nothing but small nodules that have, coalesce, and they have given appearance of this. So we can have consolidation. Okay, and this typical GGO and consolidation which appears like this, these are large perihilar location mein, these are known as alveolar sarcoidosis or alveolar disease, which you can see. So alveolar sarcoidosis, remember this thing, alveolar sarcoidosis. So it's a mimicker, you'll see GGO, you'll see consolidation in alveolar sarcoidosis. Okay, and that is why if consolidation would have been there, the chances of cavitation would be large. But if you talk about cavitation, okay, if you talk about cavitation is rare in sarcoidosis. Okay, cavitation is, so we talk about cavitation, it's rare in sarcoidosis. It's not expected. I'm not saying it's absent, it rarely cavitate. Okay, okay, one thing that we missed on is that I need to tell is, in this particular part, you can see this particular, this sign, there's a characteristic sign, name of the sign which is there. This sign is known as galaxy sign, so it appears like a galaxy. There's a galaxy sign. Galaxy sign is there. Okay, this appearance. So we can see this here also. Yes, this is what the galaxy sign is. Okay, this is your galaxy sign, and so these are the patches of consolidation. Okay, it looks like a consolidation. It will have air bronchogram as well. Okay, so you see, this is a patch of consolidation. This is a large patch of consolidation. This is a patch of consolidation. If you see in the periphery, it has having ill-defined borders and satellite nodules. So ill-defined borders, okay, and we are having satellite nodules. Characteristic sign that we see here, which we call it here as, it's a galaxy sign. Okay, galaxy sign. We can also have GGOs as well. Okay, you can have GGOs as well. So So again move, we're discussing about, yeah, so we discussed about it can have GGO, it can have a large nodule, it can appear like consolidation, it will have GGOs. Okay, that's okay. Now another important point that we need to know is that that disease, when we see disease, okay, or when we see radiological findings of sarcoidosis, we need to know about one thing that has a bearing on what all these findings have a bearing on the management of the disease as well. So why? Because we need to differentiate whether a disease is you know uh, whether the disease is active or the disease is inactive, or you can say the disease is going in the chronic stage. Okay, disease is going on chronic stage. That is also an important finding. So what all suggest active disease? So far what we have discussed about the nodules, we have discussed about paths of consolidations, we have talked about GGOs, we have talked about let's say your multiple perilymphatic nodules, and we talk about lymphadenopathy. All these features, if we take in account, these features are nothing but your active disease. They are basically active disease. Okay, they are only active disease, they suggest active disease. From now onwards, what we are going to discuss is about the fibrotic changes. Okay, and these fibrotic changes are gonna be your what? They're gonna be chronic changes. So it is important to understand that whenever we call active disease, this means that it is reversible. Okay, so sarcoidosis, you know the disease, we have to differentiate whether the disease is active or the disease is chronic state. So active disease may, what all you can have nodules. Okay, whatever nodules you're gonna have. Okay, then you have you know uh, consolidation patches and or GGOs. I'm writing it in slash. Okay, then obviously the alveolar, basically alveolar sarcoidosis, that's what I'm talking about. And interlobular or interlobular, like reticular opacities, non-specific reticular opacities that you have, should also understand that interlobular or intralobular. Okay, all these findings, they come under active disease. And rest all, why? Because the nodules are in the interlobular location. Okay, from now onwards, what are we going to discuss about is the chronic changes. Okay, these changes are typically irreversible. Okay, so whenever you have active disease, you have to actively manage the patient. Okay, because it doesn't progress into fibrosis. Because in chronic disease, patient has fibrosis, so the prognosis is also poor, that it cannot be reverted back. Okay, so because the inflammation is going on, active disease suggests that inflammation is going on. So interlobular linear opacity is also come under the active disease. Okay, then another thing that is important, that I didn't tell just now, is another pattern that we could have of the nodular pattern. Okay, pattern pertaining to which I didn't discuss. Okay, I didn't discuss actually. That pattern was of I have to discuss about we discussed the pattern pertaining to secondary pulmonary nodule. Okay, but we didn't discuss about the pattern that is pertaining to lung. Okay, so nodular pattern pertaining to lung. So what all pattern of the nodule we need to discuss about? So pattern of the nodule pertaining to lung would be that it characteristically involved upper lobe and more than middle lobe. Okay, but if you talk about upper lobar predominance is seen. Upper lobar predominance is seen characteristically in sarcoidosis. And obviously these are bilaterally symmetric. Bilateral symmetric upper lower predominance is seen here. Okay, in sarcoidosis. This is an important point to discuss. Okay, regarding sarcoidosis. Then other than thing is that, can you have a pattern, that is a random distribution? We know that random distribution pattern is seen in Miller nodules. Miller nodules characteristically have a random pattern. So can we have it in sarcoidosis? Yes, we can have, but it's rare. Biliary pattern can be seen in sarcoidosis. Pattern of the nodules can also be patchy. They can have a patchy nodular pattern, that they can be like this. This patch of nodule is there, and this particular patch suggests the abnormal lung parenchyma, and you see a normal lung parenchyma here. So patchy pattern can be there as well. Okay, so these are few important things regarding the patterns pertaining to the whole of the lung. Okay, would also be there. So now we move to chronic changes that we are going to see in sarcoidosis. So when we are going to see the chronic changes, what all chronic changes we are going to see? Okay, chronic changes. And in chronic changes, see, you're going to see, okay, fibrosis. So we left our, that those nodules were coalescing and forming, multiple consolidation or GGOs, but those patches, okay, let's first, let's show those patches. So those patches, suppose this was a patch, okay, this was a patch, and this patch will ultimately convert into a fibrotic patch. Okay, and so this is going to convert into fibrotic patch. So we cannot differentiate, and this location of this fibrotic patch will also be there. Location at the corresponding location of the nodules. Of active disease, I can say active disease also. We know what all active sarcoidosis is. So an active disease, at the site of active disease only is the fibrotic patch is going to develop. Okay, and this patch, so if this is fibrotic patch, okay, so it's a fibrosis. So what all it can cause if it's a fibrosis? So if it is a fibrotic disease, then definitely it can cause what? Changes in what it will call traction. Due to traction, what can happen? The septa, not septa, fissure or lung, fissure or hyla, they can be pulled up. They can be changed from their location. Another thing that it can cause is traction bronchiectasis. Okay, it can cause irregular type of emphysema, that is characteristically near, emphysema. Okay, there can be emphysematous cyst can be there. Typical fibrocystic changes can be there. Okay, and cyst can develop, definitely cyst can develop. Okay, what else it can lead to? It can lead to honeycombing. Okay, honeycombing can be there. Okay, so fibrocystic changes, bulla, cyst, these can be there. So these are all the, and you can also see the linear opacities. So these are nothing but changes pertaining to fibrosis, primarily or secondarily due to fibrosis. Okay, that's what it's gonna be happen. Okay, so fibrosis. And another important point would be, that honeycombing it can cause. Okay, honeycombing. Now honeycombing is an important point. Okay, it's an important point to discuss. That, why? Because why honeycombing is important? Honeycombing is important because how to differentiate whether, because honeycombing, whenever we talk about honeycombing, we characteristically, the DD that comes in our mind is basically UIP, usual interstitial pneumonia. So how can I discuss? Very important, and very easily we can differentiate, because I've just told that the fibrosis developed at the site of a granulomatous inflammation that was there in the active disease. So, and active disease is most commonly seen in what? Upper lobar predominance is there in active disease. So fibrosis and honeycombing is gonna be, although it is rare in sarcoidosis, but gonna be in the upper lobe. So it is gonna be in the upper lobe, and in UIP the honeycombing predominates in what? Subpleural and base location, lung bases. So that is going to be differentiating factor. But can you have lung base involvement in sarcoidosis? Yes, we can have. Then it becomes, uh, a factor of biopsy. It requires biopsy to differentiate, whether it's a UIP or not. But in that particular location, other features of UIP might not be there. But whenever you have a honeycombing at the lung bases, you think about UIP only. Okay. Okay. So another important thing that is in their fibrosis would be, see, you can have, fibrosis characteristic at the parahilar, parahilar location, and these parahilar fibrotic masses are like this. So these fibrotic masses, what they cause is, okay, they cause congestion, or you can say the basically the bronchovascular structures that are there in the parahilar location, they becomes congested or conglomerated. So the word that is used is conglomeration of bronchovascular structures. Where? At parahilar location. And due to this, what happened, we'll see that it characteristically, whenever you see an HRCT, and the characteristic finding that you're going to look for is, because you will not be able to distinguish whether it's a fibrotic mass or it's a consolidation mass. You will not be able to. So you have to look the secondary changes due to fibrosis, which are basically due to traction. Okay, it will cause traction, bronchiectasis, honeycombing, it will cause pulling of the fissures, it will cause, pulled up hyla. Characteristically on HRCT, you see a fibrotic patch causing the most common, early finding also. Early HRCT finding which we see due to fibrosis is nothing but is your posterior displacement of your upper lobar bronchi. Posterior displacement of main and upper lobar bronchi. Okay, this is a characteristic, finding. Or you can also see pulled up hyla. Okay, pulled up hyla, bilaterally characteristic. Okay, so these are the findings that suggest, there's a fibrosis. Okay, now if you see, if you talk about, uh, so that was, I think, much of the things that we see in the lung. Another important thing that we can see is, which is seen in 10%, patients, that if you have a lung involvement and you have, chronic changes, all these changes we saw is basically chronic changes. But what all chronic in these fibrotic changes, there's a development of cyst. Okay, cyst can develop, and if you have cyst development, okay, let's say there's a development of cyst. If there's a long-standing sarcoidosis, in case of a long-standing sarcoidosis, it's a complication. You can call it a complication, but it's very important. Why? Because it is causing mortality. Okay, you can have development of mycetoma. Mycetoma can develop, and it develops in 10% cases. And the characteristic fungi that is involved here is Aspergillus. So basically there's an in cyst. So if you have a cyst here and a long-standing fibrosis, you can have an aspergilloma that develops. And the characteristic sign that you see that suggests aspergilloma is there. Okay, this is your monod sign, or what, air crescent sign. air crescent sign, and you will see definitely this particular aspergilloma. Okay, this aspergilloma develop in chronic disease, chronic sarcoidosis. It will never develop in acute stage. Chronic sarcoidosis it can develop, and it's in 10%. And remember this thing, that this is the second most common cause of death in sarcoidosis after respiratory complications. Okay, so it is important. Okay, another thing that you can see is that you may have a cyst. Okay, you may have cyst, and remember this thing, these cyst bulla that form as a result of fibrosis are called pseudocavities, because cavitation basically is not seen in sarcoidosis, but you see cavitation here. Why? Because it appears like a cavity because fibrosis surrounds it, so the wall becomes thick, but these are not cavities actually. Okay, even if a cyst is there and fibrosis surrounding is there, it will appear like a cavity, but there's pseudo cavities. So if you see, how do you see that, when do you suspect? So you should suspect if there is a pseudo cavity or cyst and air fluid level. If air fluid level are developed in cavities or pseudo cavities that are there, or cyst in sarcoidosis, you should suspect mycetoma. Okay, but yeah, obviously air crescent sign is a characteristic appearance, but if you have air fluid levels in the cyst or pseudocyst, you should suspect mycetoma. Okay, so these are some of the changes, definitely. Now another involvement that we see, okay, apart from lung, is your airway involvement. Obviously pleural disease is there, it can cause pleural disease, okay, pleural thickening and those things. But definitely one thing that is left, okay, okay, first we see one image that is there of mycetoma. Okay, we have a mycetoma. Okay, see this is a characteristic air crescent sign. Okay, this is your air crescent sign. So we can see this particular sign, the arrow showing this is air crescent sign. So this is a nothing but a what, this is a fungal ball. Okay, and you can see here what is there. So this is a patch of fibrosis. And in this patch of fibrosis, what you're seeing, this is that there is what, traction bronchiectasis, and I think it is bronchiolectasis also. So there's a traction bronchiectasis there, and we can see there is a fibrotic mass is there, so which suggests that this has a primarily chronic etiology is there, chronic sarcoid. It's likely to be chronic sarcoidosis. Okay, this anyway. So another important image that we can see here is this. These are the fibrotic masses. See, these are the fibrotic masses that we are gonna see here. Okay, these are the fibrotic masses that we're gonna see here, and so these are the fibrotic masses. This mass and these are parahilar mass. Okay, and you can see calcifications also, calcified nodes. So we have nodes here, calcified nodes. Okay, now this particular parahilar fibrotic, the characteristics, the differential that you have to keep always is, should always keep, is silicosis. This picture can be seen in silicosis, this picture can be seen in talcosis, this picture can also be seen in tuberculosis if not, or berylliosis. Okay, this picture can be seen in here, so many locations, but sarcoidosis is also one possibility here. Anyway, so that's what we discussed about the lung involvement. One involvement that is left, okay, that is your airway involvement. So airway involvement is also something that is seen in sarcoidosis, airway involvement. And I have discussed little about airway involvement before also, that we discussed that there will be nodules that will develop in peribronchovascular location. So they'll gonna be impinging into the externally from the bronchi, and they'll cause what, this is your bronchi, and you develop nodule. Okay, let's say you're gonna develop nodule here, and these are gonna be impinging into the wall, so the wall become nodular from the externally gonna be impinging. So there is a possibility, obviously, if they are small nodule, okay, you can have what, airway involvement. If the nodule can be, the nodule can be large also. Okay, you can have a large nodule also as well. Let's say this is your bronchus and you have a large nodule. So when you have a large nodule, okay, let's say this is your large nodule, so it can cause obstruction also. These are small nodules. Okay, if there's a large nodule, it can cause significant obstruction, or it can completely obstruct the bronchus. So if it can completely obstruct the bronchus, so what all findings can be there? So airway, so basically it causes what we are discussing is what, endobronchial lesions, endobronchial nodules, or it can cause nodular bronchial wall thickening. These are the two things it can cause, and with their complications, definitely it can lead to atelectasis. Remember this thing very clearly. The most common atelectasis that it causes is your right middle lobe atelectasis. Right middle lobe atelectasis, because it is very prone to cause right middle lobe atelectasis because of its anatomy, because of its small caliber, because of its acute angle at the site of origin from the bronchus intermedius, and also its more proximity, or it's very close to the lymph nodes. Okay, not only nodules that are going to develop, the granomatous nodules of sarcoidosis that are going to impinge on the bronchi or bronchioles, even lymph nodes are going to cause, they can cause atelectatic changes. Okay, so comparatively, right middle lobe is characteristically more involved. Now, these are about a little bit large airways. Can you have a small airway disease? So definitely we can have small airway disease as well. Okay, we can have small airway disease. And obviously when we know that, that how a small airway disease is going to present. So a small airway disease, you can see small airway disease, and small airway disease is seen in all stages. Okay, so definitely small airway disease appears like mosaic perfusion and air trapping, and we know where to use air trapping and where to use mosaic perfusion. It will be seen in your inspiratory scan, and this will be seen in your post expiratory scan. That's the word that we use. So mosaic perfusion and airway disease is one. Pleural disease, I have told, it's atypical finding to have a pleural effusion there. Any type of pleural effusion can be there. And another thing that was left is your, heart involvement. So it can lead to cardiomyopathy, typically restrictive type of cardiomyopathy. So it's not very surprising that you find cardiomegaly on CT or chest X-ray. Okay, since sarcoidosis can cause, it typically causes a restrictive type of cardiomyopathy. Okay, and since it causes, interstitial involvement can later progress to, heart failure, right heart failure also. So this was a very comprehensive discussion of sarcoidosis, or pulmonary sarcoidosis to be precise. Okay, very comprehensive discussion, and this was a staging, of sarcoidosis, which I have already discussed. So most common I discussed, it's stage 1. So okay, so now we should end this topic, and if any case arises in future, we'll discuss that case in the next video, particularly about sarcoidosis. So that was all. Thank you.